whatever you want to do. Just ask. Like if you ask and they say yes, then we do it. If they say no, then we don't do it. Like don't be
Yeah.
afraid to ask for whatever. This weird
Yeah.
whatever seems like weird specialized training. That why would you guys do that? Who cares? If you want to do it and you can justify it why you're doing it, then ask and it could happen.
It's a testament to great leadership, or even good leadership. All you have to do is be okay. To be okay and try a little bit, and you'll turn guys on to things that they would have never done, which could improve them.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he got to go to the French Commando school. Like, what for you? What was the best thing about going to that course?
It was so unique to me that we did weird shit that I ended up doing the rest of my career like it was nothing. But to do it for the first time, like, okay, line up, and you're like in the push-up position, and we're all lined up, like 10 guys lined up along this trench, and here comes a tank. They're gonna drive over you, right? So they're teaching us how to put sticky bombs on underneath of tanks, like trench warfare. I'm like, what are we doing? And so this tank comes up, and as you're laying on the ground, you lift up one hand, touch the tread, and then roll underneath the tank as it drives over you. And I'm like, all right. It was just kind of confidence building that I didn't get crushed by a tank. And then they lead you over to do this obstacle course, which half of it's underwater. And you pop up underneath some of the concertina wire that's on top of the water. And you pop up for air, and there's the French Commando instructor peeing in the water. I'm like, what's going on here? And then it's back to the obstacle course from tree to tree, where you're jumping such a distance that you wouldn't make it, but it's lower. So as you fall, you go further, and you're like, I'll never make that. And you end up jumping and make it. And it built a lot of confidence for me and showed me that you could do a lot of different things that you think your body can't do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we got driven across the schools. It's French Commando School, but it's in Germany. It's weird. It's right on the French-German line in Brezock, Germany. And they drove us across into France and put us in a castle in like potato sack pants. And they took our shoestrings away out of our boots, and we had brown T-shirts, and that was it. And we were like, it was our E&E. And we were supposed to like follow an E&E plan and get recaptured and detained and tortured and then sent on our way again. But we kind of, our group, I watched our route as we drove across. I'm like, okay, straight left. I was trying to remember. And by the time we got there, we're in the basement of this castle. There's no light, and he gave us like 3 matches and a note. And we finally we burnt the 3 matches out. They didn't work. Somebody finally opens the door because we're standing in the dark for an hour, nowhere to go. I mean, it's pitch black.
Mm-hmm.
All our matches are broken. We don't know what to do. He finally opens the door and says something in French, shines a light. We read it, and is like, you need to go to this point. And so we figured out how to get out of this basement, out of this castle. And we ended up running across the international border of France to Germany, just kind of watching it and timing it, and then took off running up into a vineyard, people chasing us. And we made it back to the barracks by like midnight, 1 a.m, and nobody else got back till like 3 p.m. the next day, because they all got detained and rolled up, and they got transported across the Rhine River in a Zodiac boat. But we missed all that because we just kind of improvised, but still passed because we made it back.
You did what you were supposed to do.
Yeah, and it kind of taught me, things aren't always as they seem. Think outside the box, and you can get shit done.
Yeah, for sure. Now, you went to the U.S. Ranger School, right? Have you been
No.
to Ranger? No, you never went to the American Ranger School?
I know. I get that a lot. Hey, Ranger buddy. I'm like, I'm not a Ranger, man. I'm going to get called out for false, bullshit here that I've never said. So no, I never went to the U.S. Ranger School.
Wow, that's crazy.
I was offered to go, but I was already in the unit. I'd already been to SF, and I was already in E6, maybe E7. I'm like, and a couple guys had went as E8s, and they're like, oh, Greg went. He's the oldest guy to ever go to Ranger School. And I go, I don't care. He also flew in the back of a B-52. I don't want to go to Ranger School anymore. It's like, I don't need the leadership. I don't need the patrolling. I don't want to get screamed at by some guy who's just going to fuck with me for, 4 weeks. So I kept declining it, like, no, thanks, man. Thank you.
No need. Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask you to compare it to the German Ranger School, but I guess you can't really do that.
It's probably a lot harder.
You think so?
It's, I think it's longer.
3 months, right? Isn't the American Ranger School 3 months?
Yeah, I mean, mine was a month-ish, a little over a month, and it was more of a raids, and it wasn't like a leadership school. Especially for me, I'm the only guy that spoke English in the thing, and so it was difficult for that. But they had a lot of things like you didn't eat unless you did the raid or the ambush correctly. If you did it incorrectly, the vehicle just kept driving, and that was your food and your supplies, and you didn't do it right. You didn't have anything. So it taught us to make sure things went down right, and to have a backup plan. But I honestly can't compare because I wasn't. But from what I've heard, it's not as hard. It's not as intense.
Was there any like any kind of pressure for you to do well because you were the only American in the course?
Oh yeah, because my translator failed like on day three. They
Oh,
sent a translator with me, and he failed out on day three. It's
nice.
like, well, I went to this selection to get to this course, and now you get to come, just on your own because I can't speak German good enough. And then he failed out on day three, so I had a breakdown in the middle of that thing, just sitting around trying to crack a joke was how I got through stress, and I'm
Hmm.
lonely, and I can't communicate with anyone other than just staring at them, and they're having fun talking to German when in downtime, and I was just like cracked a joke one day out on a patrol base, and everybody just stared at me. I started crying. I was like, I'm just gonna go out here and shine my boots and pull security or some shit, man, because I got to get my shit together. So it was a lot of alone time for me, that I think it helped me grow while it was destroying me at the same time. But it was it taught me a lot, man. That's for sure. And it taught me a lot of what I could do,
Hmm.
with the absence of communication, at least verbal communication.
How about how did it kind of like shape your perspective of our partner nations? These other like the Germans and the French militaries and stuff like that.
I gained more respect than I had as a kid.
Hmm.
We're America, we're the best, we do everything the best. And then I saw that these guys were really good at things. Did they get the equipment we have? No. Did they get the money and the training we have? No. I mean, obviously we're pretty rich in that manner,
Hmm.
but they tried. They tried, and they made do with what they had. And it was weird as well. Like you get your little lunchbox at French Commando school, and there's some pate, and there's some cheese, and there's some French bread, and a warm beer, and a box of 3 cigarettes and some matches. I'm like, they still send out cigarettes and matches and beer in an MRE box. It's just weird to me at the different cultures that I had zero, access to growing up in Indiana.
Yeah.
And then boom, here I am in Germany, and I'm what, 18. I'm at a bar at a club drinking beer because you're old enough to put it on the bar. And then I'm off in French Commando school where they give you beer and cigarettes. I'm like, man, I don't know how they can be half as good because we get yelled at for cigarettes half the time. So they had a lot of skills. But again, when you're young and you're looking, you're like, we're the best anyway. Um,
Yeah.
so I had that attitude going for me.
For sure. It's crazy, like, to come back around to the whole Indiana thing. Like, you're out here doing all these wild things, and your buddies that you probably knew from high school that are still in Indiana have no idea, and it's just such a split in like life paths.
It's weird to see. I left Indiana, and 25 years later, I retired. I had been around the world. I had been in combat around the world. I had done things around the world that nobody knows about that I almost died doing. And I met so many different people at different levels. And then you come back and you talk to your friends and you're like, oh man, it's like a loss of connection,
Mm-hmm.
that you've grown so much and they haven't, because they've stayed stagnant in the same location. Yet they think they're just as enlightened, right? Everybody thinks they know what's going on everywhere. And then when
Mm-hmm.
you go out and you go around the world and you do so much stuff and you come back to someone who hasn't traveled the world or even left a state, it's like, man, there's a big difference now. It's hard to stay connected to people that haven't seen as much as you've seen,
Yeah, for sure.
and don't understand what you understand. And they're very adamant in their ways, but you've seen that, that's not necessarily true what you're screaming about. So it's kind of like a lot of growth that your friends don't get to go through that I went through, that kind of separates it, and it's sad.
I've always said on the podcast that one of the greatest things about the military is the exposure you get to different cultures, not only from traveling around the world and stuff, but just from people in your own platoon. The
Yep.
thought processes of people that are coming from all corners of the country. Plus, I don't know if you ever served with foreigners within the American military, but we had foreign guys in the Marines that we worked with,
Yep.
and it was like, I don't know. It's just different when you've gone to like Afghanistan and you see what it looks like, or you've gone to Saudi Arabia and you know what the vibe is there. And then you hear someone on TV talk about it that's never even left the country, or you hear one of your friends talk about it that's never left, and you're like, what are you even saying right now, bro? Like, that's not even like reality. And
Yeah.
I will also say that me traveling to some of these places also doesn't mean that I'm an expert in any of these places
Right.
either. It's just that I've
Right.
been exposed to some differences that other people may not have.
You're a little more enlightened. You're more exposed. You have more experience. Therefore, you are more well-rounded. Doesn't mean you know everything. Nobody knows everything. I wish I knew everything. Then it might be boring, but going off and seeing the world. And you hear a lot of things about the military's racist, the military's divided, the military's this, and I'm like, the military's a slice of the world, man. It's a
Mm-hmm.
slice of society. Society's divided. Military is probably, if you ask me, is less racist, less divided, because we're all joined together in struggle. And no
Yeah,
one
for
cares
sure.
what color struggle is, man. No one cares how when that drill sergeant's screaming at you and they're going to come kill you. Nobody cares. You join together, you work together, and you figure it out. The skin color doesn't matter. Where you come from doesn't matter. So it's just all that yap. People are, oh, the military is this and that. I'm like, the military's hardened because it's a tough job, but they grow, they develop a bond, and you can't break that, after that at all. You won't be able to break it.